All right. Good morning and welcome to Oakland Creates. This morning we are doing the Honoring Our Ancestors drawing workshop with and I'm going to quiet my YouTube because it is echoing in my ear, but I'm going to start off. Let's see. I'm going to start by sharing my screen and going over a few housekeeping things. Hopefully everyone can see. First off, what is Oakland Creates? Oakland Creates was started in 2015 as a way to provide opportunities for Black and Brown artists to showcase their work in a safe space that not only prioritized African, Indigenous, and Latino culture, but that celebrates that celebrates diversity and sought a fair exchange for creativity and artistic experimentation. Oakland Creates developed into a mini zine fest, comics fest showcasing zines, art, and comics from new and emerging artists in the East Bay, Oakland area, primarily giving space to traditionally underrepresented voices. Oakland Creates also gives space to creators who work to build a conscious, uplifting, and holistic community. So today we will also just quickly go over a safe space contract, and then I'll introduce you to Shani. Just really quickly, Oakland Creates is committed to providing a safe space, inclusive environment for everyone, regardless of gender identity, expression, sexual orientation, disability, physical appearance, body size, race, and religion. We will not tolerate harassment at Oakland Creates events in any form. Anyone violating the safer space policy may be sanctioned or expelled from the space or the event at the discretion of Oakland Creates Art and Comic Zine Fest organizer or volunteer. And I am super excited to introduce to some and welcome back to others, Shani Ealey. Shani is a spirit-chasing, forest-wandering Black woman who spends a lot of time dreaming up new worlds through painting, the written word, and zine making as a way to heal and transform intergenerational patterns of harm, neglect, self-negation, and trauma. Shani's work is greatly informed by the desire to learn and practice rituals that center the values of African earth-centered spiritual traditions. Shani's work seeks to unearth what has been buried and pushed aside as a result of assimilation, and honor, celebrate, and affirm the ancestral practices that help folks of the African diaspora to remain grounded and connected to our sacred paths. Keep up with Shani on Instagram at Annie Kweens, Kweens. Thank you for joining us. And I am now going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and allow Shani to take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Avi. Thanks for having me. Let's see. So I will go back to the share screen option. Okay. All right. And I guess I could just leave it like this. Let's see here.
If you hit slideshow, it'll fill your screen.
That's what I was gonna say. Where's the slideshow part?
Right next to share.
Right next to share. Right next
at the top right. Top right.
Top.
You see the little yellow
see
square?
my there it is. My videos were blocking all of it. Okay, cool.
Cool.
Nope, that's not the right share.
No, you want to hit slideshow.
There we go. Okay. Cool. Thank y'all for this space. Again, super shout out to Oakland Creates and AV and everyone who is affiliated. I'm excited to be here and also kind of just take this moment to pause and kind of do sort of a sort of a year in review, or more so like kind of navigating the different emotions that have come up. And so when this workshop came about, the things that were really on my heart was, this has been a challenging year. This has been a really difficult year. And the things that have been rooting me or keeping me some sort of giving me some sort of grounding has been, one, drawing and painting every day, but then also continuing to explore what it means to reconnect with Afro-Indigenous spiritual practices. And then also, how can I continue to explore my family lineage and also find the pieces of strength within that. And so before we kind of get started, I'll kind of share some art that has been on my mind this year, or what I've kind of been moving through. And then we'll do a little bit of a sort of a reflection and writing just around ancestors, but then also around loss. And then we'll tap into some drawing. Okay. So a few things for me that kept coming up was just around, what am I thinking? The ways in which we've had to hold all these multiple and complex emotions and feelings, while also trying to maintain some semblance of normal, or a routine of like keeping a job or whatever is regular, even though we're in the midst of this situation, i.e. the global pandemic that we haven't even experienced before. And so as a person who identified as an artist, and as a person who has basically been underemployed the bulk of the year, I was trying to figure out how to maintain, I guess, living. How do you maintain living within the Bay Area? So a lot of my stuff, at least a lot of my focus, was trying to figure out how to support artists and how to create space for that. One of those ways was in just doing collaborative works with folks was really incredibly healing. And so spending time with the wonderful and lovely lady, Miss Vagina Jenkins, was beautiful towards the beginning of the year, and felt incredibly like grounding and rooting. Some of the other things that's coming up for me, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit all over the place, but one of the reasons why, for me, getting back connected to Afro-Indigenous spiritual practices is a lot about the values that are at the heart of that. One of those values is, again, rooted in ancestral reverence, but the other is rooted in community. And so for me, and relationship building, it was really important to somehow maintain that in an environment where it felt like, at least for me, all of my relationships were changing in some sort of way. We decided to kind of hone in on our curiosity and fascination with the tarot, and decided to do a collab project where we worked on sort of bringing forth the Queen of Cups energy. And so here's some of sort of like the first initial drawings that came out of that. And then eventually we landed on this piece, which is like a mixed media piece, where it has sort of the Queen of Cups energy, but then also infused with the Yoruba deity Yemeya. At the time, in the beginning, there was strong feelings of sort of like loss and grief around transitioning out of a work exchange, which was beautiful, but then kind of turned into something else as the pandemic continued on. And there was, for some reason, a lot of grief for me around those feelings. So what does it mean to be able to be financially sustainable in an environment that was socially and economically changing rapidly? That sort of led into this desire to have, again, space for artists to come together and sort of process and express ourselves through the visuals, while also exploring Ifa and Yoruba spiritual traditions. With Moon Callings and Black Gods, We spent, I think, 4 weeks kind of going through different orishas. We did Eshu Elegwa, who's the keeper and guardian of the crossroads. We did Yemaya, who's the mother of the salt waters. Oshun, mother of fresh waters. And then we ended with Oya. Here are a few examples of some of the art that was coming out from those spaces or from that space, and super shout out to the people who were able to join. There's some art here from at Devon Creates, amazing, incredible artists here in the Bay Area. And then here's another example of Oya, who this came out of a workshop that was also inspired by the Moon Callings and Black God Space, but it was for the, I believe it was Michigan University, the Embodied Knowledge Forum or Women of Color Knowledge Forum. The interesting thing about this part is that while the intention was around grieving the loss of a work exchange, wanting to have artists come together and support each other, our arts, and paint together. Within that moment, I also basically experienced a huge loss in the form of my Aunt Bunny. My Aunt Bunny passed away the beginning of February while this workshop was happening. And that was incredibly hard, but then also speaks to the whole point of how important it is to kind of be in community as you're experiencing these emotions, and also kind of work through, I feel like sometimes when you feel grief or when you go through extreme loss, it seems like you may want to isolate, but it's important to be able to kind of share and express those feelings. Here are some more examples from the art coming out of that space. And then this is kind of going into where I am now. During, let me see, October, heading into October is kind of like the season of the ancestors. And so you have Bekede, which is like a Haitian celebration, celebrating the ancestors and the dead, those who've gone on. But then you also have sort of like the season, or like the October season, representing again Oya, and Oya kind of is the deity of, I'm so sorry why I'm like a little bit spacey right now. But Oya is the deity who governs the ancestors, and she also is known as the Mother of Nine. One of the sort of stories around her is that she gave birth to 9 stillborns and also 9 live children. And so sometimes when you're going back to her energy, or you want to kind of embody that energy, you are wanting to kind of move through change, transition, and loss. And so for that reason, or those are some of the things that was going through my head. Coming into October, I wanted to really root down in the lessons from artists or makers who were navigating life a little bit differently and seeing kind of as outsiders. And so this first top sort of left picture is sort of like a tribute to Minnie Evans. And Minnie Evans was a dreamer. She was a Southern artist, and also kind of got her start later into her life. I believe she didn't start painting until after her mid-40s. But the reason why I was kind of pulling inspiration from her is that she pulled a lot of her strength, and a lot of her creations came from her dreams. And I thought that that was incredibly powerful. Here's again some images of, this is the middle one is about Eartha Kitt, and then the one to the far right is about Octavia Butler. And for me, I was wanting to bring forth people who had strong voices as something that I could maybe tap into. I'm wanted to spend time with Assata because Assata sat at a beautiful intersection of sort of like freedom, kind of rejecting capitalism, rejecting sort of like the Western American sort of like way of living, and then escaping to Cuba and then tapping in to Ifa and again, Yoruba spiritual practices. I really appreciated that piece where she's sort of talking about her grandmother and the ways in which we gain information or gain inner knowings through our subconscious realms and our dreams. Okay, and so then moving kind of more into the present, I wanted to spend some time sitting with grief in relation to, again, loss of income, but then also grief in relation to actual physical people who we love who have gone on. This here is like a picture of my papa and my nana. And the reason why I put them here is because I think what's incredibly sort of beautiful about tapping into Ifa and also tapping into Afro-Indigenous spiritual practices is that they're always sort of bringing you back to how can you continue to strengthen your relationship with the people who you've lost, even once they've transitioned out of the physical realm. Our relationships with them continue onward. And that felt great. That felt amazing. Papa is here for me because he is someone who continues to come into my life through my dreams. And for some reason, I'm not sure why that is, but it feels so like, I don't know, it's overwhelming sometimes, but the love is so present. And usually when I wake up from those moments where I see him, I'm just surrounded by this warm feeling. And it's beautiful. Okay. Lastly, and again, this is my Aunt Bunny. This is my auntie on my mom's side, my mom's oldest sister, and she transitioned earlier this year. And so I wanted to spend some time drawing some representations of her, some symbols of her, in order to hold on to that energy. Okay. Before we kind of get into the reflection and sort of like writing periods, I wanted to kind of just read these affirmations. And the first is, I give myself abundant permission to honor and continue to strengthen my relationship with my loved ones in both the physical and spiritual realm, Ashe. The second is, I give myself abundant permission to gift my body, my mind, my heart with rest, with moments of pause, with moments of stillness, as many times as needed, Ashe. And then the last one, I can kind of move this. I give myself abundant permission to move with the flows of my inner waters, to release tears when I need to release bottled energy when I need to feel whatever emotion is present without judgment and without shame. Ashe. Okay. And so I said a lot, and I apologize for the scattered brainness of it. But essentially, what I felt would be cool about this space is we've experienced so much, we've gone through so much. And sometimes because of the pushes of like overworking and overproductivity, we forget everything that we've experienced, the loss, the grief that has happened. And so in this moment, if we could maybe take some time to kind of share, one, if there's a particular person or ancestor or maybe even way of being that you are grieving in this moment. Are there certain emotions or sensations in the body that feel more present than others? And then what is this sort of journey with grief calling for? And maybe we can take, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes to kind of spend time with those questions, and maybe have some dialogue around that if possible. If not, we can kind of get into drawing on screen, and then maybe we can kind of talk back and forth. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay. I don't have a timer, but I'll just keep the time 12:22.
So we're writing about our intention. Are we writing about the previous slide?
Let me see. Sorry, yeah, my bad. This one,
Okay,
reflection. Mhm. Thank you.
Oh, and I just want to remind folks, it doesn't have to be, in a formal paragraph, formal sentences, just sort of a stream of consciousness, whatever comes up, write it down. And then, of course, if you feel comfortable sharing, we'll share it after 2 to 3 minutes.
Mhm. Let's see. Okay, so I'm wondering, should we kind of start sharing our reflections around any of our writing? Does that feel okay in this moment?
That sounds great.
Okay. Okay. Um, I could start unless anyone wants to start first. Okay. So my first sort of sharings as I was spending time with some of these questions is, let's see here, are there certain emotions or sensations in the body that are more present than others? I think that for me, sometimes it's shame that's coming up. And then also shame around like the organization or the untidiness of the grieving process. I think sometimes it's like you're kind of going through the motions around like, okay, this is approaching, or someone's time is getting ready to come to an end. But then there's like that week of leading up to planning memorial services, inviting family, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. And maybe there's the actual service, and maybe that feels like that's just the end of it, but it's not. And so even though it feels like it has this finite process, the feelings still kind of show up, and they're not gonna, and they show up kind of sporadically or random. And so even though you could have maybe lost someone in February, like those feelings still come up a couple months later. And so I guess shame around still feeling the heaviness is what came up for me. Would anyone else like to share?
Sure. I'll go ahead and share. My name is Avi. So my person that I'm holding space for is Norvell, my older brother who passed just recently. And so some of the feelings that come up is sort of confusion, some anger, just mostly because his passing was so unexpected. Also just being able to, we had a good but volatile relationship. So some feelings of forgiveness, forgiving myself for not necessarily expressing myself in the most patient way and loving way. And so yeah, and then just sort of wanting to keep his memory alive with my nieces and nephews. And so that comes up as well. But then also the feeling of his warmth, that's loving, being a protector as my brother. So yeah, that's about all I had time for.
Thank you. Thank you. Did anyone else on the Zoom want to share anything?
I'm happy to share. I'm really grateful for just a space to hear about how other people are experiencing it. And I think like all the different ways that shows up, I think for me, I feel lately that I'm in almost like an anticipatory grieving situation. My father is older, he's 70. And he's had like a bunch of heart attacks and strokes, and I think just systemically his body has like really been run down, and it's starting to show a lot. And I'm just really feeling that. I think it's so difficult to not notice now because it's so visible in his body. And so it feels a little foolish to be thinking about it so hard, even though there isn't one sign that I can point to and I'm like, it's gonna happen, or like we're clearly near the end. I just find myself like, grieving in a way that I find difficult to justify maybe. And I think Shani, I resonate for what you said about experiencing perhaps like shame or guilt. I think I'm having those thoughts where it's just like, I've wasted time, he's wasted time, like now we are both conscious of the way that we have spent our time, and the work that we have and haven't done. And I think it makes it it's like both a challenge to be very present and also makes it very difficult to be present.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that's how it is. And I have so much compassion for folks who are going through the more intense, like physical manifestation of like when the loss does really hit the physical world.
Mhm.
And just wanting to like really be present for folks who are going through that, and also feeling really out of my depth because I
Mhm.
know that shit is going to feel like it sneaks up on me. And like, how do you how do you prepare for that, you know? But yeah, very grateful to be connecting with folks and know very much that like none of us are alone in like all the different ways that loss and grief happens.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing sharing those sort of reflections and what's happening in the present moment for you. Okay, so I think that it would be best we can totally continue the conversation, but I'm going to, I guess, stop sharing, but then invite us all, whether you're watching via YouTube or you're on the Zoom, to kind of spend some time thinking about how you may want to honor these feelings. And so it could be a particular person, it could be something that represents them, could be a symbol, it could be a portrait of the actual person. Or if it's sort of like something outside of a person, it could just be whatever sort of markers symbolize that. We could spend some time creating like a rough outline of that. I'm going to turn on my camera. Got it. Let's see. Okay. Okay. And so I kind of started already, but what I wanted to do was do something for my auntie, my Aunt Bunny, and sort of the things that I'm thinking about right now is how she was, again, like the older sibling of my mom's side, but also embodied a lot of that divine feminine energy, that divine matriarch energy. And so when I think about her, I think a lot about Yemeya. And it's beautiful because she even kind of went out representing Yemeya in some ways in terms of like the colors that she was wearing. But when I think about like the ultimate mother and the way that in many ways she was at times was like that extended like parental figure. Those are the things that I'm thinking about. So I am going to start. And maybe we could do this for maybe 15 or so minutes and then come back and share any of the things that we've worked on or other things that may have came up. I wish we could have some music, but I feel like there might be a copyright thing. I don't know these things.
Yeah, I think we would have a copyright issue.
Okay.
So.
Okay, no worries. No worries. Let's see. Mhm.
And folks that are drawing, if you feel free to draw and share your process of drawing too, if you feel comfortable.
Right. Goodness gracious, my eraser. The other thing I was, I guess, in conversation with, I think AV and a few others, just around how experiencing loss within the realm of COVID and like this global pandemic has also been really intense, and makes it feel even just a little bit harder. And that there's like your individual personal grief, but then also there's like the greater collective also experiencing, you know, a global sort of loss. I think I was just looking at the numbers in pandemic losses since the beginning of this year, and it's just wild. Because I feel like now it's almost over 800,000 if I'm right. I don't know if that's right, but that's what I saw.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and yet, you know, we're still moving, and sometimes it feels like we're moving as if nothing has happened.
In terms of protection or in terms of folks
I think in terms
getting...
of I think just in terms of, I think maybe what I'm saying is I would love to see more time and space made for grieving.
Right.
And not to say that I need some like national, like government funded, like day of grief, but
Just recognition, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, let me see if I can.
I just had to quickly change my lead. Sorry.
It's okay. Let's see how I'm gonna do this. Yeah. And then the other thing is like the way that grief gets compounded, or the way it just unearths other unaddressed stuff.
Right.
These eyes are not working. Yeah. Other unaddressed stuff, and then like almost like, I guess, kind of speaking to like the anger parts, just the ways in which it just highlights like our own sort of weaknesses, or like sort of altruistic desires for change. I feel like in my family, we struggle with, I don't know, just we have two family members who have passed away because of like kidney related things or like dialysis, and how, I don't know, some of these things may be preventable. And so then you feel like you're responsible because you knew it happened before and you still didn't necessarily make any changes. So there's guilt. So then there's also guilt that comes up. Okay.
I've heard people say that the way that people are counting coronavirus deaths is accurate, but not fully acknowledging the way that the pandemic has impacted people with health conditions beyond coronavirus, who like don't find it safe or secure to like go and have access to care for their other conditions, or who get deprioritized because of all of the things that are fucked up in the first place about the medical system, you know? And I felt it really validating to read someone acknowledging that. And then I was also like, honestly, you know, when you were talking about your family members and, you know, saying like, oh, well, these are conditions that in theory, like could have been prevented. I mean, it's like, yeah. And then also like, I don't know. I wish that people would acknowledge the impact of like the standards of care actually being like sometimes abusive and inequitable. Like those are factors that actually like contribute to conditions in the first place, you know? And I think that that's another place of like dissonance, right? Is that like, oh, it's like, well, healthcare is always inherently good and worth engaging in. And I get why people, you know, for a pandemic, like obviously everybody deserves care, but I think it's like also more complicated.
Right. Right. And then even when you say that, I'm like, how the care looks differently when we're all being encouraged to isolate from others. And I guess that I have like conflicting feelings just around like you need community, you need your relationships in order to make it. Yet it felt like we couldn't even like access that resource or access that support. And so how do you provide support to family members whose health is on the decline? And yet you're trying to navigate, well, I mean, I can't really get to you until I quarantine for this amount of time. And so it just felt hard to kind of reach people.
Yeah, I think especially older folks. And I think that one of the things that I became really conscious of is like how deep my own internalized ableism goes, even though I like think that I've done a lot of work on it, which is true, you know. But I think, you know, I was hearing some of my friends say, like some of my friends who have been basically isolated and like in some way immobilized or like sequestered or quarantined and not been able to have like in-person physical contact for years. You know, hearing them talk about like how it feels to see like large numbers of able-bodied people struggle with the things and like finally give like recognition and validation to how hard it is and what the impact is. And meanwhile, like this has been their life forever. And I think particularly there's like a way where like, I don't know, I know a lot of elders who like don't consider themselves disabled, but have like lots of chronic health things, but their internalized ableism is like, they feel very strongly about being an able-bodied person and like wanting and expecting, you know, and valuing like, well, in-person contact is like a metric, right? And of course it's so valuable, you know, but like, you know, just not having spent time on like investing in and like accepting and like not judging like more accessible, less tiring ways of engagement before there was like an urgent need for it, which I mean, I am definitely in that boat in the same way. So yeah, I had to take a second with my own self for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, just as a person who has recently gone through an illness themselves, you sometimes do, like Roxana saying, you experience that grief or that loss, the sense of loss, because in some aspects I lost independence of being able to care for myself. And even coming back out of the hospital, that feeling, that overwhelming feeling of not being as independent as you want to be. And so that shows up in multiple ways. But even though you're grateful for the community that's helping, you still, really want to care for yourself. And that's a hard pill to swallow, not to maybe cook for yourself, or you need help bathing, or you need help to and from the bathroom, or any of those things that you normally can do for yourself, and things that you normally take for granted. And so it gives you a new perspective on loss of just mobility, maybe, and just like I said, independence. And in some cases, being able to financially make a living. Luckily, I am blessed to have health insurance, but there's so many people who don't.
Right.
So, that whole system of healthcare in our country, it definitely can be depressing, and lead to definitely a sense of uncertainty and confusion around navigating that system and how to care for yourself at the same time. And then, God forbid, you do have another layer of like houselessness or joblessness. And so,
Right.
like I said, fortunately, I do have a job, and a job that provides healthcare, and I was able to gradually care for myself again. But if you don't have those resources, then what do you do? But you do spend a good amount of time thinking about that.
Right.
And like I said, and literally going through loss of independence is really traumatizing. And a lot of people, because of shame, don't talk about that. But I think it's highly important, especially to process that and to sit with that,
Right. Yeah, so interesting. Okay. Let's see, it's 12:50. How is, ooh. Dang, did you start that just now?
Yeah, I just started it now. I think it's it brings up so much emotion. So yeah, I always want to, and it's rough. It's a rough drawing to do. Um, but yeah, I think it's a good exercise to just sit with those emotions and remember him.
Yeah. I know we're approaching our last couple minutes, but I guess I just wanted to pose the question of like, what either feels the most supportive in terms of like going through the grief process, or like sitting with someone who you may have lost, like what feels the most grounding or the most soothing? And like I think I'll just share, like the parts that I felt most grounding for me has one, just engaging in stuff like this, like spending some time drawing, talking, and then also just being a lot around water is helpful. Even just like, again, it's raining right now, that feels really like comforting and soothing. And yeah, and I guess just being able to talk about it without feeling judgment or shame, and being able to express like those emotions that aren't necessarily palatable. So like being able to express the rage, the anger, and the tears. And so that's why those affirmations for me were important. Like I'm constantly having to tell myself that I have the permission to feel. I am a feeling being. And part of this whole process is to like feel it and express those feelings. Okay.
Do we have anyone else that's drawing that would like to share?
I'm just really grateful for, you know, folks like yourself, who like just set aside the time and make the space, you know. I think sometimes it's so, you know, you're talking a lot about like how isolation can like compound grief. And I think sometimes it's like the biggest thing to just have a person say like, listen, I'm gonna set a time, I'm gonna set a place, like all you have to do is show up. And that's such a gift. And yeah, I'm just super, super grateful for it. Thank you so much.
I think that it's key to healing, you know, to find community and a support network. So I thank you for showing up and taking the time out. Just like thank you for everyone that's on this call and people who are watching too. Yeah, because when people share, I mean, you definitely get the, you know, a better sense of you're not alone and you're not by yourself. So thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can just say a couple of words. I've been really quiet. Because I also just feel like there's like the grief that came up for me in the first reflection feels a little bit privileged in a way, where like I've mostly been supporting other people this year. And kind of felt some of that, the like kind of what I don't know. This is something maybe shared by a lot of people and not often talked about, just the like moving through just your cycle as a female and the babies that are not born, and that grief it just comes around all the time sometimes. But I think not having anything really big happen I don't really take the time, like I don't know what her name is who was just speaking, to like sit down with the grief now and put your finger on it and see what it is and feel it. I'm just really grateful to be sitting here quietly. I can show you what I drew, but it's like in a whole different realm.
What did you draw?
And I also, I guess, want to say like I go to the ocean. Water is like a big. Oh wait, my camera's blocked. Water's my main ally.
Hi, yay, yes, water.
I drew this.
Oh my
Oh, wow.
gosh. Yes. Ah. That's gorgeous. That's gorgeous. Okay. Yeah, mine's is coming together. I think I'm gonna keep working on it. It definitely takes me a little bit longer to finish these things. But I do appreciate everybody popping on for a little bit to kind of talk through things, and thank you for bearing through my scrabbled mind. But like, honestly, it's hard to digest everything that has happened, but it feels really beautiful to pause in this way, and I appreciate the space and sort of the encouragement to sit with it.
Did you want to share your Venmo so folks can tip you?
I can share in the chat.
Yep, that would be great.
Yeah, so my Venmo is this. Yeah, so I would just say keep up with us. I'll be posting the finished version of this probably early next week. And thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your drawings and for your words and for your reflections.
And then I just want to quickly just wrap up too. Let's see. Quickly share my screen again. Just to, I'm sorry, bear with me. Just make sure I acknowledge everyone. Do we have any questions? We've had a couple. Thank you. Laneha House said thank you. Will said thank you. Any other questions? I just want to share the upcoming events. December 16th on Thursday, I'll be interviewing Laneha House, our guest of honor. And then, of course, Oakland Creates is December 18th. Again, I'll repeat that. Laneha House interview is December 16th on Thursday. Saturday, December 18th is Oakland Creates Fest, which will be online. And you can follow us on YouTube. Let's see. Thank you so much to you, Shani, and all of our participants, volunteers, those monitoring the chats, everybody supporting us. Hopefully next year we'll be in person. It's so awesome that folks are supporting us while we are in this virtual space. Just thank you so much to everybody. And then if you had any final words that you want to say, Shani.
Yeah, just be easy with yourselves, and again, give yourself permission to, take whatever space and pauses that you need.
Yes, thank you so much. Great seeing everybody. And we are signing out.